This is the fourth time that we have a knowledge share session. I'm here from GRSP supporting this Botnar work, and with me is Kim Benglua. Also, we're both country leads for a few of these projects, and thanks for people for joining. Let's have a short round of introductions from people from our grantees, or maybe Rama, you can just quickly say who you are and where you're working and what city you're in.
Hi everyone,
Yeah.
My name is Ramadan Anza from Amend. I'm based in Tanzania, specifically the city called Tanga for the Botnar Child Road Safety Challenge here. Yes, we have been the grantee for almost 3 years now, and yes, it's finally good to participate in this webinar.
Great, thanks a lot for introducing. Yeah, Miguel Angel, please.
Yes, thanks, Carlos Felipe. Jaime is telling me that he's on the waiting for in the room, just to confirm that he's here. But
somehow we don't see him, but I'll send you the link.
Okay. Well, I am Miguel Angel from Mexico. I am the president of an NGO, Reflexiona. We make we deal with road safety issues, with vehicle safety issues, supported with by Botnar Foundation and GRSP. And as well, we deal with tobacco control, with sponsored by Bloomberg Philanthropies through Tobacco Free Kids. And as well, we made some changes in Mexico. As you know, there are a lot of street vendors, and we make or we try to improve at least some changes with the public spaces when the street vendors are. So in Mexico, as in Latin America, there are many places to renew, and that's what we do in our organization. Thanks a lot, Carlos Felipe, and nice to meet you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. And I've sent Jaime the link just in case through WhatsApp as well. Okay, we also had, I think, Victoria, was it, from WRI Mexico? And then otherwise, Jorge, please feel free to introduce yourself. I saw you just joined.
Hi, Carlos. Hi, everyone.
Okay, so Jorge is with WRI Mexico, and then he's working in Colima in one of the other projects. I see that Jaime also joined. So Jaime, welcome. You can introduce yourself if you want.
Hello.
So Jaime is also working in Reflexiona, specifically in I mistakenly wrote Colima, but they are working in Culiacán.
In Sinaloa, yes, Sinaloa.
So.
Si quieres decir algo, Jaime, if you want to say something, that's perfect.
It's okay.
Yes, Shine is
hello, everyone.
Fine. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so Keiran and Sam are from 3D Street. They have a great presentation, and I'll just let's not take more of our time. Let's have them present themselves, and then yeah, we can later do a few exercises that they've doing. So please feel free to participate as Keiran and Sam prefer, either during the presentation or after. Yeah, so take it away.
Great. Well, I'll do a quick introduction. We're going to present today about a software project called 3D Street. It's an open source software that we have been developing that is starting to get used all over the world for road safety projects and other advocacy work. And we got to know Carlos through this work, and we're very excited to share it with you and to get your feedback. Sam, maybe would you be willing to do a quick introduction on yourself, and then I can give a little more background on me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey everyone, my name is Sam. I'm based in Palo Alto, California, so just a few minutes south of Keiran in San Francisco. I found 3D Street at the end of last year, And I kind of found it as an open source project, and I started to contribute. And my contributions kind of snowballed, and Keiran and I have kind of been working together ever since. My background is in, I guess, web-based 3D visualization, GIS, and actually autonomous vehicles is the industry that I work in right now. But I'm also really passionate about safer streets. So hopefully that's a good introduction, and it's nice to meet everyone.
That's great. Thanks, Sam. And I'm going to share a little bit of background on myself. And there's a reason for us to provide this background because this overlaps with why we're doing this project. So like Sam mentioned, there's more to this than just software. I am a father now of 2 kids in San Francisco. And San Francisco is both a wonderful place for biking and active transportation, and also a horrible place for biking and active transportation. It's beautiful. There's lots of places accessible by bikes, but it's also a city that prioritizes motor vehicle traffic at the expense of safety of other users. And so as I had a family and I saw that impact, I became an advocate. And I didn't intend for this to happen. That's not my day job. My day job was actually a software engineer for video. But I started to get involved in a lot of advocacy work in San Francisco. And I learned that there are a lot of issues that make it very difficult for someone like me or Sam, who are not professional transportation engineers. It gets very difficult sometimes for us to work with a municipality in order to promote changes we want to see. And what we found were a couple problem statements. So the first one that I think most people on this call will understand and agree with is that as a global issue, this is a serious issue. Leading cause of death for children. And in order for us to change the world, at least in the United States, it always depends on closed source, expensive software that civil engineers use that lay people cannot use. And there's many different reasons why lay people cannot use this software. Sometimes it's simply the cost. It's closed source software. It's often not even made available for sale to lay people. Even the software that is available has a heavy motor vehicle bias. And then the impact, why is this an issue, is that very often attempts from advocates will get shot down because of technical feasibility issues that they don't have the ability to counter. You know, as a layperson, if an engineer says, we can't have a stop sign here, I have very limited tools to fight back against that. And so that was a lot of the original impetus behind why we were spending time on creating something that allows anyone to leverage those same powerful tools, but in a way that's accessible even without that professional training or money or experience.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll note on that is that throughout the design and the building of the application, we definitely prioritized not only giving people cutting edge tools like the ability to integrate satellite imagery or drone scans, but we also want everything to be very user friendly and just welcoming, right? We kind of want to welcome people to create their own vision of what a street or a intersection can look like in the future.
Yeah, and that sums it up. I mean, that's kind of the solution that we're looking to try to provide to the world and to you all. Can we make these sorts of street planning tools something that is accessible and it could actually be fun? And then is it possible to make these tools open source and free, at least free for 90% of people? And maybe at some point we charge agencies, but you know, we always want to make sure that these tools are available for folks that don't have access to this sort of technology. But this isn't new. So these issues have been around for a long time, for decades, really. And I think it's worth highlighting another project that is inspiration for us that has been very successful. And that project you may have heard of is called StreetMix. It was founded in 2013, and it is widely used today. And I do think it's one of the best examples of how you can create software that empowers people to make changes that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And StreetMix is found all over. In San Francisco, you will see it on posters that the official agency puts up when they're making an announcement about a change in street configuration. I see it all over the world. And this for us serves as inspiration, excitement that it is possible. But StreetMix also has a lot of limitations. It really is a simplistic tool that allows for cross sections. But then when you actually start to get into implementation, and again, you start to work with professional engineers, this is where often the rubber meets the road and things are less feasible than you may think when you're doing a cross-section view where everything is idealistic. So that was kind of the impetus. And we thought, well, what if we could take the concept of StreetMix that has a cross-section and then turn this, extrude it into a three-dimensional scene. So kind of a starting point to say, hey, these tools are easy to use to make a cross-section. What if we then expand that into another dimension and make it accessible for people to start visualizing, well, what would the entire block look like if we were able to do something like this? So before I continue, any questions where we're at? Should I keep going or?
And maybe if people would like to mention if they've used StreetMix, I think some grantees have good experience in the past.
I have one question. Keiran, the software 3D Street is something that you developed for free to the world, or
yes,
or you, yes, okay.
Yeah, it's
thanks.
open source right now.
Open source, yes, perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's open source and free to use. The goal would be that someday we find a way that we can charge entities that have the ability and willingness to pay. So for example, in San Francisco, I would like the SFMTA to pay us money. But for people that don't have that ability, we would like to make the majority of features available for free. And there's a concept of software called the open core model, where you give away 90% of everything for free. And then you have just a layer of features that sit on top that are only applicable to large entities or large companies, such as security or internal sharing tools like that. And that's the model that we're looking at because it helps fund access for the common folks while also being able to appropriately charge entities. That's the idea. But for now, if we make no money, we are doing this out of our passion, and we put lots of time and effort into it because we enjoy it. So, Sam and I have other day jobs, but this really is what gets us excited and seeing the impact it can have. And that's why we're also happy to talk to you all.
Yeah, and even just on a weekly basis, like speaking to advocates in San Francisco about how they would like to use 3D Street is also just really exciting. So there is like that weekly affirmation.
Totally, and that's a great transition
in the right
to.
Direction.
It's excellent transition into the visuals. And so I think this is a perfect case of where folks are starting to take our software and doing things that we didn't imagine. What you're looking at right here in this screenshot is a visualization that a local advocate created and actually got published in one of the local online newspapers here to essentially advocate for a better configuration for a very popular commercial corridor on Valencia Street. And so he took it upon himself to first create the three-dimensional version of the street, but then he's a coder, so he knows how to do code, and he was able to actually continue to expand this, to clone objects, to add lots of different things. And this represents the vision of where we want to go. So I'll share a couple more things. So I'll take a step back. So let's look at how this works. So we have our StreetMix cross-section, and then we can convert that into a scene like this. So this is kind of the simplest case where, again, we just had that StreetMix street, we import it into 3D Street, and then it gives us this automatic view where we can rotate and see all the different elements of the scene. And what we try to do is to support all the different sorts of objects that are in StreetMix, so that, again, when we think about fun and excitement and empowering people, that there are lots of different objects that make a space feel like it's someone's that they developed. They feel like there's ownership over it, and it makes the scene come to life. And we're actually working on making it come to life. So part of the work that Sam and I have been doing recently is adding support for animated characters, people, cars. So that's exciting and fun. And then that kind of,
I'll just mention really quickly is that all of the models and characters that we use are, the scaling is accurate, right? So the people are the right height, and buildings and everything is accurate enough so that it can be used in real life and in a real life street situation.
Yeah, and where that becomes really helpful and looping it back to feasibility and where sometimes advocates get challenged is in this specific project on Valencia Street, there is only so much width, and the advocates did not understand that if you're having a parking lane in the middle, you need to have space for the car doors to open. It sounds simple, like, you know, it's pretty obvious, but when you're in this cross-section view, it's hard for people sometimes to see that reality. When Jonathan, as his name, brought this into 3D, it was immediately apparent that there was not enough of a buffer zone between the parked vehicles and the cycle lane. And that's just one example of many that, again, as a professional engineer, you know this stuff. You've memorized it, you know how much of a buffer you need. But as a layperson that doesn't know these things, it's very difficult for them to be able to present a plan that is truly feasible for implementation by a local municipality. Here's another example. A gentleman on the East Coast in Philadelphia works for the Philadelphia Area Bicycle Coalition. And similar to a lot of places, he was advocating for keeping COVID changes permanent, and specifically a stretch of roadway along a river that had been open to pedestrians and cyclists during the pandemic. And the advocacy work he was doing was to help people understand what it could look like. And it's not going to be crazy hell on earth if the vehicles have less space, but actually it could be a beautiful experience. And here's other examples where we added specific object types for COVID that have barriers, temporary or permanent, and show pedestrians taking over some of that space on the street that was formerly used for motor vehicles. Other examples of how we've been using this in real life, in San Francisco, there was a recent collision, a fatal pedestrian collision at the intersection of 16th and South Van Ness. We were helping some of the advocates with promoting alternatives to the local agency on how you can reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians. Again, for you all on the call, I think these are concepts that you're very familiar with: painted safety zones, decreasing crossing distance, having more, you know, chicanes or barriers for motor vehicles. But again, for non-professionals who are trying to figure out how can they make a difference, having access to these tools and kind of having this toolbox really helps expand for them what are the options that are available to help make this intersection safer in my community. Another really fun development, this is technology development that's even, it's not just 3D Street, but in general, our mobile phones these days have very advanced cameras. Some of them even have LiDAR scannings. And again, thinking about how we can have fun and empower people to really change the real world around them, we've integrated the ability to take scans that you can make from your phone and actually put them inside of a 3D scene. And you can go even further than this. This is actually an example of a scene that I scanned myself using my iPhone. It's Keiran Alley in San Francisco that has beautiful street art, both on the ground and on the walls. And this was really a proof of concept to show that you can go from your mobile device, you can actually create a 3D rendition of this. You can then bring it into the virtual world. This is a screen recording from a VR headset. And then where it gets really powerful is combining these things together. So what we've been working on more recently is, okay, can we take all these elements that we see and put them all together and then empower folks to start telling stories from it? And I'll give an example of what that story might look like. Again, this is the intersection at 16th and South Van Ness in San Francisco with the recent collision. You can imagine how you can start telling a story. So here's the intersection as it is today. We can zoom in and look at the three-dimensional scan. This was actually done by a drone. It was my drone that did it. So this is kind of like a DIY Google Earth that can be higher resolution and localized to wherever you need it. And then this empowers you to start creating extremely accurate digital twins of the current configuration, and then showing, well, what could we do to change it? So in this example, we're showing the ability for us to have more what is called in the middle of the crosswalk, like a pedestrian refuge or pedestrian safety zone.
Yeah, the
these sorts of
median.
things. The median, yeah. So suggesting that they add a median here, at least around the turn lanes, so that you know, again, decreases the crossing distance or provides refuge, protected refuge for pedestrians.
Yeah, and to me, just like the toggle ability is so powerful because it lets you see the satellite imagery, which is exactly what exists right now, or even the 3D scan that Keiran took, and then you can directly impose the suggested treatment right on top of it, and you can see everything to scale, what it would look like, or what it could look like in the future.
So that's exciting. We can see the stuff in VR. We even have basic support for traffic signals. But what you're going to see here also is that we don't have a great user interface yet. So as we think about the status of our project, it is not readily usable by lay people yet. There are some very basic functionalities, but a lot of the functionality is only accessible through code. And so this kind of represents the next stage of where Sam and I and the team are looking to go, which is, you know, we've shown you all the bits and pieces of what's possible. Now what we're trying to do is to create an interface that's simple. And this is a beginning. This is really kind of just a viewing interface that allows you to toggle things. But the next level is, can I edit these things directly? And can I make it easy for folks to be able to make those modifications that are relevant for them? Again, we have basic things like moving and positioning, but the next stage is having street mix-like features in 3D Street so that you can actually make roadway configuration changes from directly in the application without having to go to other third-party tools. A few other things I want to share because it's fun is that when you start to open up your mind and think about how these things can work with kids, there's a lot of potential. So here's a fun example with my kids where we get a projector and you can actually just mount your projector, like a digital projector, and aim it at the floor. And it turns into a fun activity. Other examples that I've seen elsewhere is that you can then get large paper and give kids crayons, markers, and let them have fun and let them replicate what the world looks like and then come up with their own fantastical version, whether it's feasible or not. We're also working with a third party on a video game. This is intended to help folks understand the value of having loud bicycle horns. So we're working with an advocate that makes loud bicycle horns. So this is a very early prototype. It is not done yet. You can see that there's all sorts of problems with it. But that's another way that we're just experimenting and having fun with having fun and making these things more understandable to folks to see, oh gosh, this Shara up here offers a lot less protection than the protected bike lane at the beginning of the course, as an example. And then the vision that I have in the long term is that we combine the excitement that I think that most kids have around science and technology, and we're merging it with the worlds of urban planning and civil engineering. And in a separate world, I have taught many courses for kids on VR. So I've been teaching middle school and high school students how to use open source free web-based tools to create virtual experiences. It's the same framework that we've been using for 3D Street. And so you can imagine a world where we essentially have a curriculum that empowers students to learn all these basic technology fundamentals at the same time that they're able to learn the urban planning, safer streets fundamentals, and actually mixing those things together so that folks can do real world projects. These are not ours. These are pictures from other publications you may be familiar with, but I think these represent the possibilities when you help people understand this could happen. There's also very low cost ways that folks can experiment with real life treatments from that. So that, again, that's more painting the vision of where we'd like to go someday, is to take that virtual world and then help people transfer that to the real world and actually try things out and to involve the community in making changes based on their suggestions and their ideas. So that's all cool, but where are we today? Where we are today is that the majority of what I showed you does require a fair amount of code in order to make it work. So a lot of the examples I'm showing you were kind of bespoke examples that we had to put together. The good news is for today, for our session, an activity that we're going to do, we do have some automatic scripts that can convert your street mix street into a 3D rendering. And I thought that might be a suggestion for an activity that we could do together, where we take a few minutes, we create a street mix street, or you share a URL of a street mix street that you create, and then I can actually instantly give you back a 3D version of that we can all view. So maybe we'll take a pause for just a second. We can answer some questions, and then we can see if it makes sense to do a little activity where we do some live conversion of some street mix streets.
And maybe, I mean, I think some of the people who have used street mix before actually in their Botnar projects aren't here, but otherwise, if you have something specific that you've already done, please feel free to share.
Yeah, maybe what could be helpful is if I could show you just a few minutes of what it's like to use street mix to make a street, and then how we convert it. And if you are so inclined and you want to, you could also do this and follow along, and then I can show you then how we convert that into a 3D street. So it feels like I'm doing kind of a magic trick. Prepare. So I'm going to open up street mix. I'm already logged in. You may need to create a new account if you don't already have an account. And this is an example of, actually, this is part of that South Van Ness and 16th Street project. So I'm actually going to create a new street. So we have kind of a new visualization. This is the default street that street mix gives you. This is probably a good place to start. So I'll show you by just adding 3 and D to the end of street mix and pressing enter. This takes that street that you've created and instantly turns it into a 3D version. So that's the default street, but we can change it around. So let's try doing a little bit of changes here. If you will,
We should add a magic carpet.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
I pasted my own, which does contain a magic carpet.
Oh, great. Okay. So even just making a couple little changes like that, let's see what that looks like. There we go.
There we go.
So we have one person on the magic carpet. We have 2 buses. And let's try that link. You said you pasted that link into, aha, there we go. Let's open it up in street mix first. Do that here. Okay, so this is the link that Carlos just pasted. So we'll load this in street mix first, and then we'll add 3D to it. Aha, and we see some new objects here. This one is a food truck, well, food trailer. Cyclists on a red bus. Nice.
And if others want to share their own streets, please feel free.
Good question. This is a Carlos question. Is the magic carpet powered by renewable energy?
So it's powered by magic. We actually looked for it. We estimated the top speed of the magic carpet from the movie. Well, somebody else did, but yeah, it's powered by magic, so it's clean energy is all I know.
Cool. I'm curious what they calculated as the average or the top speed of.
I think 170 kilometers per hour.
Wow.
Yeah, 90 something. There's one shot where you can estimate it from the different buildings.
Wow.
That it sort of passes through.
They might need to put some speed governors. Cool. Well, where should we take this here? We could do some more street mix stuff. We could do Q&A. I can share my asks.
So I think one good thing to sort of get people actively involved here is if you can sort of ask questions about what you would, or think about what you would like to do in one of your projects where something like this would be useful. Either either 3D street or street mix, and then we can sort of have a discussion around how to integrate it, or if you see limitations or things that you would like to apply. Like maybe I know that Miguel Angel and Jaime have in your project, there is this specific interventions that you're doing where you have some discussions around where to put the stoplight. But things like that, I don't know if anybody has any suggestions of things, or even Kim, if you can think of some of your grantees of things that they could use this for.
Well, the biggest problem I found that for the grantees in Vietnam and India are that the streets are not as organized. They have other things on the street, from street vendor to cows, to encroachment and things like that. So even those, when they design it, like they look nice, but in the reality it will never look like that. So I think that is some challenge. I think we need to think about, I think those elements into it, encroachments, animals, street vendors, and elements like that.
That's true.
That's excellent feedback. Yep.
And just to maybe complement, in the street mix discussions, because we're sort of part of both, some of us, but in the street mix discussions, there's always that question, like how can we have a component which is sort of all the illegal stuff, cows on the street, cars parked on the sidewalk, and in 3D street, of course, it's easier because then you can sort of say, well, it's not the whole street, because which is what you see in the section. It's a few places where this happens along the street.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent feedback, Kim. And I also think that's where the concept of scanning the real world environments and bringing them into the scene can really help. And what I'm seeing as we create these scenes together is that there's some things where you want to use the 3D scan to represent it, and there's some things where you need to use the digital twin to represent the changes. And we are trying to figure out how we evolve those things together, because it feels like for some cases, it makes more sense to use the real world visualization, and for some things you want to layer on top the virtual version. And I don't know what the right interplay or mix of that will be, and I don't know. We'll find out.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we can continue the discussions. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, feel free to continue with these asks, Keiran, and then we can sort of take it from there as well.
Yeah, so I mean, the two asks that I thought would be helpful to share would be asking us for help to collaborate in creating visualizations. So, partially that is a challenge back to you, Kim, when you encounter streets that have challenges, maybe that's a good thing to involve us in, to say, how would this be visualized? And how could you guys help us make it easier to represent these things that are less prescribed? San Francisco does have very straight intersections, 90 degrees things. And so helping to challenge us to move in the direction that allows for much more organic spaces is great. And so helping us to see what are literal real world situations that you're experiencing, that'd be great. So to the extent that you feel comfortable to share information about your projects, and to even more so make very specific requests of, it would be nice if I could have a visualization like XYZ. We're very open to that. It's really, this is a way for Sam and I to kind of stretch what the product can do and to have it applied to more real world situations.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so that's one ask. Anyone here, please feel free to contact us directly, try it out, and then we're happy to coach or help you or other members of your team to create visualizations. Even if we have to do this bespoke or manually at the beginning, that's kind of the point of collaborating with folks like yourselves.
Thanks a lot.
And maybe even, so one thing that I'll throw out there, but then Keiran, Sam, you can reconfirm. In the case of Mazatlan in Sinaloa, which is one of the places where a crossing was recently redesigned, Miguel Angel and Jaime have been doing drone videos, but I think it could make sense that if they're up for it, they could try and do the polycam thing to get a 3D version. So just to maybe you can go back to your 3D to your polycam rendering. So Miguel Angel and Jaime, and then everybody else, like whoever has a crossing, you can, because you have a drone at your disposal, if you take enough, like you have to take around 200 pictures of the crossing, but if you sort of follow the instructions, you can do this for free, and you could sort of load this to get a 3D version of your street. It's a little bit frustrating and long to do it properly, but this complementary thing called Polycam, it has sort of a trial version, and I think it could be very powerful if you can do. Yeah, so these are examples, but it could be powerful for you to get the 3D version of the Mazatlan crossing, and then sort of show this is today, and this is how you could do the redesign of the crossing. Yeah, because I think like you still have work to do in that crossing, like the issue with the stoplight, and because this Polycam thing has a free period, and because 3D Street is sort of testing these things out, this could be one collaboration where I think could make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you have video from a drone that covers all of the surface area,
Yes.
it is possible to extract images from the video to then assemble together to create a 3D scene. So
so that's great. I guess you need some form of geo-referencing from the video, because the video doesn't have it, right?
Precisely, yeah. So the video does not have GPS, as would the JPEG stills from a lot of drones, but that's okay. Polycam doesn't actually know GPS either. So no matter what, part of this process is you have to relocalize. So after you make the 3D thing, then you put it onto a map, and then that helps you orient it correctly, and then it helps you make sure it's the proper scale, and then adding on the digital twin components.
Okay.
But that could be an area right now where I could say, hey, why don't you send us the video, and then Sam and I could see if we can convert that into still images and get a Polycam version.
And especially because, so that's what I didn't suggest, because I didn't know video worked, because they have videos from before and after.
I think that'd be an excellent example, because that's actually, I'm being selfish here. What helps me is it provides more examples for us to use in the layers panel, where we could have things like 3D scan of prior conditions, 3D scans of the new conditions, and then using some of the virtual tools to show here are additional changes we might want to make in the future.
Right, so that would be, okay, that's good to know that would be a good collaboration. So I'll put you two in touch. Well, so Reflexiona and 3D Street, so that you can start testing. So of course, as Keiran mentioned, because still working on it, but examples are useful for both sides, because like I think like when I did it, so I helped in sending my 150 pictures of my own street, and when I was able to sort of see my street, it was super, like it's super cool to be able to show this to colleagues, and especially in the case of governments, like showing governments that you have these tools at your disposal, I think is the kind of thing that would be nice to sort of show.
Yeah, this is that scene. This scene we didn't localize the digital twin version quite yet, but you can see some of what we were able to create from the scan.
Which of course is, my pictures aren't too good, so of course it looks like some dystopic nightmare, trees falling and whatever, but
yeah,
so that would be one nice thing to do. So specifically on, in the case of Reflexiona, so you have your second thing, because I think the youth and children portion is also relevant here.
Yeah, I mean, this comes from kind of a passion of mine, but I also think there's something special here in being able to involve kids in the planning process. So again, this is more aspirational, these are ideas, but if you have other groups, organizations, local folks that you work with that you think might be interested in this stuff, we'd be happy to help create lesson plans, to be able to create, here's kind of a guide of how they could bring kids through depending upon their age level. We're also happy to help advise or brainstorm or create material to help with that.
Yeah, and also welcome to hear any ideas from anyone in terms of, like, we have this recurring question: what's the easiest or so the better way to involve not so much kids in this case, but youth? So youth is a greater interest in the Botnar work, and I mean, when we want to engage them actively, that's sort of a big thing. And sometimes it does seem to make sense that when they see these kinds of things, they'll be more interested than pencil and paper kind of work. And so because of the funder, who is this Botnar Fundación Botnar, they have a specific interest in engaging youth through technology and AI. So I think either directly through this or by sort of engaging, but not directly. Like I have this hunch that youth would be very interested in being engaged with these very sort of high-end applications of technology, and finding a way of so I'm trying to sort of, and our discussions with Kim and our other colleagues and our boss, who is at Sunny, in how do we engage youth and how do we sort of start to think about things in future. I feel that technology applications could be one way of engaging youth more actively, right? So that's sort of the kind of thing that I would also think about more directly to this point, right? And yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and you know, we've applied for a few US federal government grants. We did not get them, but as part of this, we put together a lot of actual material for what these lesson plans could look like. And this is just an example where we should say, hey, here's all the different tools, you know, depending upon the age level, the skill level of the youth. Some of these tools might be more appropriate than others. Some are completely free. You can use it on any device. Some might require a special phone or a headset. But the fun part is it really is adaptable. Like depending upon the resources and the skill level, you can adjust that kind of program and training for that audience.
Yeah, and so I've shared a couple of links also because I'm not sure if grantees knew about sort of this connection that Botnar has started to have. They've been having these discussions with the UN, and then they made some sort of webinar on how they've begun to work on with youth. So that could be sort of another thing to think about. Yeah, Kim, I think you opened your mic, but not sure if it was.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to some grantees. I think this is a good tool that I think to get the youth to interested in street designs, become we're talking about training the new generation traffic engineer and traffic planner. They're not just focusing on moving vehicles. I think this is something that I think we could get even like high school you know high school students to be interested, and then start thinking about the future and how that we can use this to actually not just also make them interested in the new traffic planning or the street design. Also have them have a better skill for the future by using technology.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. And then I'm not sure if Miguel Angel wanted to say something because I saw his mic on.
No, it's only just opened. No, well, I see that the street web page, Street Mix, is in Spanish as well. So this is very, very good for us. Of course, just to a comment to improve the site, and it's just a matter of questions or comments. For example, trees or vegetation. Normally in Mexico City now we are dealing with very bad decisions because they put like many trees, eucalyptus for example, different species that are with very small roots that require a lot of water and they're very high. So with the winds that we are having right now, all the trees are falling down. So I don't know if the program can recommend you the vegetation that you need on your on the street that you're planning. This will be very important. And the last time with the other presentation that we have had in the past, I stated that normally, and this is very nice because you can see what is happening on the street. You can see the bike lines, you can see the bus lines, you can see everything, the sidewalks, and everything is very nice. But as well in Mexico City, on developing countries, we have a lot of problems down the streets. So I mean, we have natural gas, we have drainage systems, we have water systems, and
like
yes, and under the streets exactly, and everyone is always making holes on the streets. Or when you put a tree, the tree with the roots are in a couple of years, the sidewalks are like broken. So it's very important to know, for example, where do you need to put the drain systems or the water system or the gas system in the bike line, in the bus line, so I would like to see in the future these features just to understand that the people who is making or taking the public decisions are conscious not only on the street but what is happening down the street, under the street. Yeah, thanks.
That's great feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to complement this, like we had a lot of discussions some years ago with the Street Mix team, and one of the things that many people want is sort of to be able to go below ground, right? So that's sort of it's a big challenge. And the first thing, like recommendations are pretty data intensive, but it would be like a beautiful thing to have. Like also in Street Mix, we were sort of thinking about what if you have this and then, well, Street Mix already tells you this is too narrow. Like on a bikeway, it says, yeah, it's too narrow, and it actually reduces the capacity of that segment to 0. And you could sort of say, well, look, if you have this combination of street segments, this will be dangerous. Like road safety will suffer. And I think that would be nice. Like if somebody's like going crazy with their own design and they say this is perfect, the platform could say, well, not so much. Like if you look at these examples, and these are the best practices, and it has nothing to do. And it could be sort of rule-based, or it could be sort of more machine learning stuff that could help you in establishing these recommender systems. But yeah, those are good ideas. As always, there's a bunch of ideas coming from these discussions, and the challenge is always for the team will be how to do everything and whether it makes sense. But it's great to hear.
Yeah, these are great. These are great feedback. I think the one that really resonates with me, if I was to kind of summarize it, is that the real world is messy, and it's really important that we provide a way for people to represent some of the messiness of the real world, and it's not always going to be a perfect straight line. And so that is definitely heard loud and clear, and I think that's a good area for us to work on. Like all this stuff is really exciting. I mean, the other ask I would make too. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'll share some of the photos. So yeah, this recent trip to India
great.
and Vietnam. Those, yeah, it's really messy.
It's in Vietnam?
Vietnam, India,
this is on
Vietnam.
The chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
The other ask too is if you know any educational institutions with like PhD or master's programs that have students who might be interested in doing some research. So the example you shared, Carlos, about the auditing layer or machine learning kind of layer on top of it, it's totally doable. Like that is a pretty classic machine learning thing where for a given set of rules, you
Right.
start making some inferences and then having kind of an audit layer. And so that's the sort of thing that in theory we could do, but it's also things we can empower other organizations to also help with. So if you also think of other organizations or educational institutions that might have interest in collaborating, that's another path to helping make these things happen.
Yeah, I have a few other ideas of mine. Okay, look, so we are almost at time, and then if anybody has any other burning question, insight, in the meantime, very happy to hear from you. Even if it's a comment, I didn't like it, or never going to work, it's always welcome also.
No, I was just congratulate Keiran and Sam. It's really useful tool, and maybe we can, as Carlos Felipe mentioned, we can make something in the project that we're having in Sinaloa. Let us check the videos we have, and if we are able to send you something to be reviewed by yourself, we will appreciate a lot. Thanks a lot.
Great.
Great. Okay, so I think we're ready. It was great to see people from several places in the world, and thank you very much to colleagues from 3D Street. I'm trying to see how we can. Teams isn't the easiest thing, but yeah, gallery mode. Yeah, but thanks for your time.